Greetings. On behalf of the Black Business Association, I want to welcome you to the 2020 Salute to Black Women's Empowerment Summit, virtual edition in observance of National Women's Equality Day. I'm Kim Anthony Morrow, and I have the distinct honor and privilege of being your host. Now, National Women's Equality Day commemorates the 1920 adoption of the 19th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which prohibits states and the federal government from denying the right to vote on the basis of sex. It was first celebrated in 1973 and is proclaimed every year by the President of the United States. Now, this summit focuses on the significance and the impact of the women's vote, and particularly the African American women's vote. As we all know, the women's vote is critical this November for the national elections and throughout the world, actually. So please join me in taking a look at just how far we've come, but how far we're about to go.
The 19th Amendment, ratified this month a century ago, is often hailed for granting American women the right to vote. And yet, most Black women would wait nearly 5 decades to actually exercise that right. But today, more than 15 million Black women have the constitutional right to vote and are one of the most active voting blocs in the United States electorate. So we're here to shed light and pay homage with this proclamation celebrating Women's Equality Day. Whereas African American women of the United States have historically been treated as second-class citizens, denied the full rights and privileges, public or private, legal and institutional, which are available to male citizens of the United States. And whereas this year's observance, which marks the centennial of women's suffrage through the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920, only included white women, leaving out women of color, and it was nearly 50 years later when Black women were finally protected under the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed literacy tests and other discriminatory policies that denied people of color the right to vote. And whereas, although commemoration of this momentous day in women's history is observed, it is important to recognize that African American women to this day have continued to face obstacles to exercising their right to vote. And whereas, the women of the United States have designated August 26th as the anniversary of the 19th Amendment, culminating a 72-year nonviolent campaign to extend the right to vote to women as a symbol of the continued fight for equal rights. And whereas African American women of the United States are to be commended and supported in their organizations and activities, and must stand united to assure that these rights and privileges are available to all citizens equally. Now therefore be it resolved that the Black Business Association recognizes the commemoration of that day in 1920, on which the women of America won their right to vote and to serve in the highest political offices in the land, and continue to work for equal rights for all citizens, and particularly the Black woman.
Wow. Well, at this time, please join me in introducing someone who really needs no introduction. He's known as the godfather of Black business in Los Angeles. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the president and general manager of the Black Business Association, Earl Skip Cooper.
Hello, my name is, wait a minute. By the way, this is very important. My name is Skip Cooper, President and CEO of the Black Business Association. And we have a very special and significant historical day today. Today is the 100th anniversary of Women's Equality Day, and women being given the right to vote in America. It took over 70 years of women fighting, protesting, demonstrating to earn the right to vote. And now, not only the women, but all Americans have the right to vote. It's still a fight. It's still very important. But hopefully, you will vote on November the 3rd. Now, I have a very sad note, as most of you know by now, that last week, the chairperson of the Black Business Association, the Honorable Gwen Moore, passed away, and we miss her so much. She was in the California State Assembly for 16 years, and she was an advocate for women. She's an advocate for equal rights. She's an advocate for so much, and she was always there to help. And now she's not with us, but she's still here with us in spirit. So today we recognize the 100-year anniversary of the Women's Equality Day. And we know we have a very exciting program with some dynamic speakers and some dynamic organizations being recognized. So please enjoy yourself and also donate. That's very important to the growth and development of not just the Black Business Association, but the growth and development of African American businesses all over this country. Enjoy yourself. Thank you.
The Black Business Association, a 501c3 nonprofit organization in Los Angeles, founded in 1970, is the oldest ethnic business organization in the state of California. The BBA is committed to ensuring that African American and other diverse business owners benefit from advocacy efforts to impact, improve, and implement policies and programs that improve their access to capital, contracting, and procurement opportunities with organizations and agencies within the public and private sectors. But because of COVID-19, the BBA is being asked to do so much more with so much less. Now, more than ever before, your support is critical. Did you know that economists predict that 41% of Black-owned businesses will not be able to reopen after the pandemic? Please support the Black Business Association as they work to uplift and empower African American owned businesses in our communities. You can donate by using the information at the bottom of your screen or log on to bbala.org. Join, become a member, but whatever you do, contribute what you can.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so very pleased to join the Black Business Association in observance of National Women's Equality Day, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment granting women the right to vote. Let me first thank my friend and VBA's President and CEO, Earl Skip Cooper, for inviting me and for his leadership organizing these wonderful events. I am so pleased and so proud of him for the attention that he's given to women in all of his work. He has honored so many women and recognized the success that so many women have had, and they would have gone unnoticed, unhonored, but for Earl Skip Cooper. Thank you so much, my friend. I would also like to pay honor and respect to your late chairwoman, the Honorable Gwen Moore. I know so many of us were shocked to hear of her sudden passing, and my condolences go out to all of her loved ones. Gwen Moore truly exemplifies today's theme, the significance and impact of African American women to the vote and voting rights. Gwen Moore helped found not one, but two organizations to harness the power of African American women and their vote: the National Organization of Black Elected and Legislative Women and the Los Angeles African American Women Public Policy Institute. So I join you in honoring her and saluting today's honorees, Senator and Democratic nominee for Vice President Kamala Harris, the Honorable Autumn Burke, and my friend Lena Kennedy, and the Los Angeles chapter of the National Congress of Black Women, Minnie Hadley Hampstead, President of the NAACP-LA, Kiana Charles, and Tiffany Mukoso Oki-Oani. The 19th Amendment was a true achievement and a testament to the potential of our nation, but it was an achievement likely impossible without the efforts of those it ultimately ignored, Black suffragettes. In the middle 1800s, Black women began to advocate. After Harriet Tubman freed herself from slavery, after then she could have, but did not, relax her own freedom. She returned to the South about 13 times to rescue over 70 others. Sojourner Truth was both a suffragette and an abolitionist, demanding women's rights at the same time that she demanded freedom for African Americans. So, at the Ohio Women's Rights Conference in 1851, she gave voice to the plight of Black women in what became known as the Ain't I a Woman speech. She was one of the original crusaders for women's rights and the right to vote, a powerful legacy that continued into the next century. Ida B. Wells, the journalist who led an anti-lynching campaign in the late 19th century, organized the Alpha Suffrage Club among Black women in Chicago and brought members with her to participate in the 1913 suffrage parade in Washington, D.C. The legacy and guiding light of Tubman, Truth, and Wells never diminished. Each generation of Black women took up the cause from the generation before it. Women like Carlotta Bass, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Shirley Chisholm were a testament to that legacy. Yet, we fight still for equality. That fight is represented by efforts to adopt constitutional language as simple as the Equal Rights Amendment, or ERA, which merely states that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. So despite the simplicity of the Equal Rights Amendment, these words, if enshrined in our Constitution, would have mammoth civil rights implications for women nationwide. Yet, the arbitrary, congressionally created deadline for ratification of the ERA came and went in 1982. And House Joint Resolution 79, which I am a co-sponsor of and was proud to vote for, would extend that deadline and welcome the 3 states, Nevada, Illinois, and most recently Virginia, that have since ratified the ERA. The ERA would guarantee gender equity in the Constitution for the first time in our nation's history, adding to the legacy of the 19th Amendment and honoring all those who pushed our country toward the recognition that gender equality is a core principle of American beliefs. And so, I have enjoyed participating in today's program, and thank again BBA's President and CEO, my friend Earl Skip Cooper, for inviting me and for his leadership. Thank you so much. Enjoy, and let's not forget the contributions that Gwen Moore made legislatively to our state that has been so helpful and supportive of women and people of color. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. This is Assemblymember Autumn Burke. I wish we were gathered here under better circumstances, but as most of you know, we are mourning the loss of your chairwoman, Assemblywoman Gwen Moore. While small in stature, she was a force of nature who was respected across the state, and when she spoke, people listened. I know I did. She was more than a friend and a confidant. Gwen was family. Her passing leaves a huge void with us today and for the days to come. Gwen and my mother instilled in me the values of service and sacrifice at an early age. Because of the example they have bestowed upon me, I am able to stand on their shoulders today and fight for everything I believe in. They have charted a path not just for me, but for generations of Black women. Today is about celebrating exceptional Black women in leadership. And I want to join you in sending my personal congratulations to Skip Cooper, president of BBA organization, for 50 years of service to African American business and entrepreneurs that include women in business. Ms. Minnie Hadley Hempstead, president, Los Angeles branch, NAACP. Political activist Lena Kennedy, the chapter of the National Congress of Black Women, and Kiana Charles, principal manager, local public affairs, Southern California Edison. Tiffany Okiani, student activist, University of California at Berkeley, and the next Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. All of these women have been pioneers in a long battle for civil rights. One we hope that in 2020 our marble ceiling would have already shattered. But clearly our fight as Black women is as alive today as it was 60 years ago. But as always, we know our value. This election is like no other. This year's election will test our country's values and our commitment to truth and equity. That is why we cannot sit on the sidelines and take our right to vote for granted. We just celebrated the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, guaranteeing and protecting women's constitutional right to vote. The passage marked the largest expansion of democracy in history. And yet, most Black women would wait nearly 5 more decades before they were able to actually exercise that right. And here we are today. We have the opportunity to elect not only the first woman, but the first African American to the second highest office in the country. This election is imperative that we all use our collective voices to further the work of those who came before us. We must vote. In my family, I grew up firmly believing in the mantra, you lift as you climb. This election is about the kind of world my mother envisioned for me and my daughter, and for every single Black woman across the country. We can use our vote for more than just standing against someone. We can use our precious right to vote for someone. This November, we have the opportunity to use the power of our vote to lift the first African American woman to the second highest office in the country. In the spirit of hope, let us vote. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this year's 2020 Salute to Black Women Empowerment Summit. Stay safe, stay healthy, and vote.
You have paid it forward, not only to persons like myself who are on your staff, but to thousands of minority, women, and disabled veteran business owners who thrive as a result of your legislative efforts with the utility companies in the state of California. In my career, I have used you as a regular sounding board as I've taken varied steps along the way. Let me personally say thank you.
Gwen, you are so deserving. Your time as chair of the Committee on Utility and Commerce of the California Assembly led the way to amazing legislation that still benefits millions of Californians and people across the country and the world today. In the area of supplier diversity, your General Order 156 has led to now $7 billion per year in spend amongst women, minority, and disabled service veterans, and states around the country are following your lead. In the critical area of broadband, your MORE Act, which we call Lifeline, is probably the key element to narrowing the digital divide to help so many communities have access to high-speed broadband and communication services. There's so many other areas that you have had such an amazing impact on my profession as an attorney and law professor. Your work on the California Bar Association board has been nothing less than game-changing for so many that rely upon good legal services for their rights in this state and this nation.
Coley from the California Small Business Association. We want to send our congratulations on this achievement of yours. As you may or may not know, the small business community respects, admires, and loves Gwen Moore for all of the contributions you've made to us in the small business area. You've given us challenges, and you've also given us opportunities. And we want to not only thank you for what you have done, but we look forward to working with you in the future. You're a special woman-owned small business. You're a friend, and you're an October 28th celebrity. And Gwen Moore, all of small business loves you.
Gwendolyn Moore, what an incredible person. The state of California is now much better off because this person came along in the late 70s, became a part of the political policy-making process in the 80s, pioneering in an area that African Americans had never, ever been involved in, and that is the whole business of public policy on energy and utility regulation issues. Gwen Moore became the pioneer for African Americans in an area that African Americans had never, ever dreamt of being a part of. And not only did she become the pioneer, she became part of the architectural scene as it relates to public policy making in this subject matter, and she has continued to the present day. Gwen, you've done good.
Started out as a probation officer. At the time, Senator Mervyn, I believe, went on to become congressman, and Lieutenant Governor had a urban leadership program where they provided a scholarship for a master's degree, and I went to SC on one of those scholarships, and part of your duty was to work with or be assigned to a politician. And I was assigned to Yvonne Braithwaite Burke and Leon Ralph, you know, at two different levels. And so obviously it kind of whet my appetite. And when a position became available on the Community College Board in California, which was a very popular position, it's where Jerry Brown and a few others served prior to moving on, I was elected to the Community College Board in Los Angeles County, and thereafter to the legislature. When I was elected to the legislature, it was the first time that Republicans outnumbered Democrats in recent time at that time. And I can remember that we had a freshman class that we decided that, you know, freshmen always think that they're the first ones to do anything, and that we were going to be together, and that we were freshmen regardless of party, and we were going to all work together. In moving your agenda, you have to have a certain amount of power. And certainly when leadership begins to develop your expertise. And people will respect you for what you know, and you can make a difference. People were lamenting about not being able to get to be chairman or not having chairmanships, and so the point that we were attempting to make with them was that you don't have to be the chair to have power in the committee. Knowledge can give you some of the controls that you really need, and that if you learn your issues and become known as someone who's knowledgeable, people will come to you.
Thank you for inviting me to share remarks for Women's Equality Day 2020. The right to vote, which is our cornerstone of our democracy, belongs to all U.S. citizens who are 18 years or over, but this wasn't always the case. During the 19th and 20th centuries, black women played an active role in the struggle for universal suffrage. They participated in political meetings and organized political societies where they planned strategies to gain the right to vote. We thank them and we honor their sacrifice. Today, the work is not done. We find ourselves in a moment of consequence. It's incumbent on every one of us who has the right to vote to exercise that right. Vote early this year to ensure that you are counted. I would also like to take a moment to congratulate Black Business Association Chairwoman Gwen Moore and President CEO Skip Cooper for over 50 years of service to African American women-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. I'd like to acknowledge today's honorees, Vice Presidential nominee and United States Senator Kamala Harris, State Assembly Member Autumn Burke, Kiana Charles, Principal Manager, Local Public Affairs, Southern California Edison. Minnie Hadley Hepstead, President, NAACP, LA. Lena Kennedy, Political Activist. Tiffany Mukoluchi, Kiana, Student Activist, UC Berkeley, and the LA chapter of the National Congress of Black Women. I thank you.
Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we're pleased to introduce the moderator for the 2020 Salute to Black Women's Empowerment Summit, none other than CBS 2's Pat Harvey. She is an award-winning broadcast journalist, co-anchor of CBS 2's 5, 6, and 11 p.m. broadcasts. She is the longest-running anchor in prime time at one station in Los Angeles. She has won 25 local Emmys and a national Emmy and received the Joseph M. Quinn Lifetime Achievement Award from the LA Press Club in 2004. She was named Best News Anchor by the Associated Press in 2008, and she received the Genie Award from the LA chapter of the American Women in Radio and TV. And she's been recognized by the National Association of Black Journalists. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our moderator, award-winning broadcast journalist, CBS 2's Pat Harvey.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that very warm welcome, Kimberly. And it is my honor to join all of you today. And I'd like to welcome everyone out there in virtual land to the Black Business Association's 2020 Salute to Black Women Virtual Empowerment Summit, in observance, of course, of National Women's Equality Day. The summit focuses on the significance and impact of the women's vote, and especially the African-American woman's vote. The women's vote is critical for our nation's election in November and throughout the world. National Women's Equality Day is observed to commemorate the 1920 adoption of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which prohibits the states and the federal government from denying the right to vote to citizens of the U.S. on the basis of sex. It was first celebrated in 1973, and it is proclaimed each year by the President of the United States. Now in its 18th year, the BBA Salute to Black Women typically hosts a summit for emerging women entrepreneurs, a series of workshops entitled Role Models for Success for high schools and college students, a women's business expo, and an awards luncheon honoring outstanding business, political, corporate, and community leading women. This year, in light of COVID-19, the Black Business Association has elected to honor our slate of exemplary honorees when we may celebrate them together, live and in person, in early 2021. And boy, will all of us be more than ready for that. With that said, however, please join me as we acknowledge this year's Salute to Black Women honorees. Let's give them all huge applause for where you are. First, Honorable Autumn Burke, California Assembly Member. Minnie Hadley Hempstead, President, Los Angeles NAACP. Kiana Charles, Principal Manager, Local Public Affairs, Southern California Edison. Lena Kennedy, Community Activist and Political Strategist. Tiffany Okiani, Student Activist, University of California at Berkeley. Go Bears. The Los Angeles chapter of the National Congress of Black Women, and Honorable Kamala Harris, U.S. Senator representing the state of California, and the first Black woman and the first person of Indian descent to be nominated for national office by a major party. And now, it is my honor to present our panelists for today. Celestine Palmer, founder, Los Angeles African American Women Political Action Committee, who under her leadership has played a decisive role in several campaigns, ranging from former U.S. Congresswoman Diane Watson and retired AME Bishop Carolyn Guidry to current U.S. Senator Kamala Harris and U.S. Representative Karen Bass. She is also the founder of the Los Angeles African American Women's Public Policy Institute, a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with the goal of preparing women for leadership in business, government, and the community. Patrice Marshall McKenzie, Board President of the Los Angeles African American Women's Public Policy Institute. She is a skilled professional, adept in the legislative process, public affairs, and media relations. She also possesses a well-rounded repertoire of expertise, including policy development, community relations, and human resource management. Tiffany Okiani, a senior at the University of California, Berkeley, majoring in legal studies with minors in global public health and African American studies. She also assists and supports Cal Berkeley's Black Recruitment and Retention Center, which focuses on empowering Black youth and their academic pursuits. Aline Brown Harris, she holds the distinction of being Chevron Refinery's first woman and first African-American scientist on the Gulf Coast. She is the chair of the National Congress of Black Women Los Angeles chapter and has served on its national board for the past 6 years. Yvonne Burke, the first African-American woman to represent the West Coast in Congress, serving from 1973 to 1979. She was the Los Angeles County Supervisor representing the 2nd District from 1992 to 2008, serving as the chair not once, but 3 times. So with those introductions, I'd like to welcome all of our panelists today. And here's the first question, ladies. During the 2020 DNC, 2016 presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has noted that while women won the right to vote in 1920, that right was not extended to Black women and other women of color until decades later. To then have a Black woman on the ticket as vice president, it demonstrates how far we've come. Now, do you find that statement to be true or false, and why? And let's throw it up to Elaine to answer this first question.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would say it's true because Black women have been ready for a very long time, since the days of Fannie Lou Hamer, also with Shirley Chisholm and others, but we were never given that opportunity. We were always labored as the angry Black woman. And we were never given a chance to prove ourselves. So now with Kamala Harris winning, being on the ticket for the VP, I feel that she set great examples for us. Right now, we have 120 Black women over the world, that's over the states that are running for office. And I do believe that given that opportunity and getting the vote out, everyone makes sure that we're going out encouraging people to vote, that's going to really make a difference in the outcome of the election. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Now, Ms. Palmer, you have been laboring for many, many, many years. What do you think about that statement from Hillary Clinton?
First of all, I think African-American women have been ready many, many years, and particularly Kamala Harris has been ready. We have just framed the political parties so that now they're recognizing the absolute readiness for the African-American woman to be a candidate for the highest office in this country. I feel Kamala was the perfect person at this time, and I believe that we have been preparing all of these years, and we have a history of being ready. It's just that I think the community had to catch up with how ready we are. And I believe we have the perfect person to be the first African-American woman and Indian heritage to assume this role of vice president.
Okay, Patrice, what are your thoughts on this statement?
I would say that is a true statement. However, just to give a little bit more historical context, there were many, many Black women who were involved in the suffrage movement in the 19-teens and in the early 1920s. It's been documented that as early as 1913, there were Black women who asked and wanted to be a part of the suffrage march, and they were denied full participation. There were some who decided that they were not going to be marginalized and decided to not march at all, and others decided to have an unofficial delegation who participated in the suffrage march in 1913. So while the right to vote was granted to Black women, to women in 1920, we were definitely there, definitely a part of the process, and we received the full, unencumbered and stigmatized or without consequence or I would say without a footnote, we were able to vote fully in 1965. And so from that point on, Black women have been active organizers, active leaders, and active members of the political process. We are finally seeing on a very broad scale that Black women are being seen as people who are not only just organizers, not only just sort of community leaders, but also being able to serve as policy leaders and elected leaders. So we're really, really grateful to see that we can sit on either side of the table and be received and respected as people who are able to lead in multiple facets.
No, Patrice, you made me think about Ida B. Wells when you made that statement, how at the time during the 1920s, Ida was told to go back where the South delegation was, which was the last of the line in that particular march. And she refused, and in her typical revolutionary...
Oh, courageous.
Exactly. She marched with Illinois, which was up front. So I just thought that was important to point out as we're talking about the suffrage movement. Just people should know that, yes, as Black women, we still had to fight to participate. All right. Thank you so much for your contribution. And Tiffany, I guess you noticed I saved the youngest for last. So let's hear from our college student in terms of what you think about that statement, how far we've come, if that's true, and why.
For me, I think it's true. It's definitely important to have Black women represented in positions of power. And it is also very inspiring as someone who is a college student to see someone who looks like me on the ticket for vice president, not only as a political figure, but also as a reflection of the rapidly building power of Black women. As the other panelists have mentioned, over the past years and across America, more and more Black women are taking up space in Congress, and especially on county school boards, and just places where initially we were left out, but now we are reemerging with a newfound power and newfound voice. I definitely still think there is more work to be done. Not to say that Kamala being in that position is not something I was looking forward to, but sometimes in this country, we let symbolic maneuvers represent progress when certain things still aren't changing. Because oftentimes Black women tend to spearhead movements and enact this change that we're seeing, but rarely we become the stars. We're often still othered, we're ignored in our contribution to American politics. So I still think we need more representation, more acknowledgement, and more inclusion. However, I do believe that progress has been made given the history of this country.
You know, can I add, ladies, too, that Black women have earned that right to take a seat at the table, at the highest seat at the tables. Let's go back a couple of years ago, the legislative process in 2018. It's true. The Black vote, the Black female vote helped the Democrats. I think that's true. I think you'd all agree with that, right?
Yes.
Had it not been for, they actually turned, to me, the legislature around with that vote in 2018. They were the ones who would come out selflessly and always show up. And I remember Representative Clyburn actually making that comment when he endorsed Joe Biden. And we've heard the talk about what they thought, what they wanted Joe Biden to do and why. And it wasn't just, let's give them a handout. Black women actually earn all the respect and the power that they should have. I think you agree with me, Eileen. Looks like you want to say something.
Well, you're absolutely right. I feel that our democracy is on the ballot, and we're in a battle for the soul of our nation. And women have mobilized, they're trustworthy, they're loyal, and we know that we can make a difference. All we need to do, like you said, is have a seat at the table, and we can make sure that legislative issues are changed for the betterment of the community with our help. You know, as you know, that quite a few of us are dealing with the COVID-19. And a lot of people don't even have health insurance. So I do believe that women in this vote can really make a difference in the outcome of the election and all the rules and regulations that will be put forth for the betterment of our world, our children, our seniors. So I think that being a part of this struggle is going to be very positive for the entire world.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, you brought up COVID-19, and that is our next question.
Oh.
With our nation enduring the devastating perils of COVID-19, economic instability, racial disparity, and political turmoil, we'd like you to speak to the importance and the power of the African American woman's vote. Now, you touched on that for a second there. I would like to give any of the other ladies an opportunity to respond.
Go ahead. Yes, I think that voting is going to, I think that voting will make major changes, like I said, in this world. And I can allow other ladies to speak on that, because mobilization and having automatic registration, you know, the same day voting, early voting, you know, all that's going to play a difference. And I had told my family that as soon as my absentee ballot come in, I'm going to fill it out and mail it right away, because I know that that would be the best thing to do for our nation.
You know, when we're talking about COVID-19, let's face it, we have a lot of our first responders, our essential workers. Women are just a very crucial and critical part of the segment of society that is really helping others and saving lives. So when we talk about COVID-19 in particular, again, and we'll have someone else give the opportunity to address this as well, just how important does that play into how women show up at the ballot box and how they vote? Patrice, you want to take that?
Yes, I think it's absolutely vital that we as women, and Black women in particular, show up and make sure that our voices are heard at the ballot box, because if we are not able to give input on decision making, on policies, and on what the path to recovery is going to be, we will not be able to look at the unique needs of Black women in that recovery, because as you said, Black women are often represented, overrepresented in essential worker functions. We are educators, we are librarians, we are nurses, we are bus drivers, we are paramedics, firefighters, police officers. We are first responders in just about every profession that there is. We are also the first responders in our homes. So if we are not able to make sure that we are protected and that our health and our health needs and our unique health needs are not prioritized, we have to be the ones to carry that flag, to champion our cause, and make sure that as treatment plans roll out, as plans to begin to normalize whatever normal looks like in the future roll out, that those decisions and those actions and those plans include what is best for us as Black people. And just to push on something that Ms. Harris said a little bit earlier, Coretta Scott King said in 1970, women, if the soul of the nation is to be saved, I believe that you must become its soul. And as Black women, we have been the soul of this nation for much, much too long.
Well said, Patrice. Ms. Palmer?
Yes, I just wanted to say that in looking at the stats on the COVID-19, how it's affected the African-American community as well, one of the great things about having women at the table and in the legislature and in the lawmaking process, the women understand how important it is to legalize and to make legislation that is in favor of African Americans and African American women. So we have to make sure that we continue to elect women all the way down the ticket, because they're the ones that are going to, number one, write the laws and see that they're enforced. So COVID-19 has really brought home to us the very necessity for women to be at all tables, not just their family, but also we have to go outside and help with, and also I say assist our lawmakers, because if you help them with the creation of the policies and the laws, then we can help enforce it. So I don't think we should just wait until they come up with some ideas. We should give them some ideas that are appropriate to the situation that African Americans are in. Because when women speak, we're speaking for the entire family and our total community. So we must not just try to make everyone vote at the top, but we want them to vote totally down the ticket and create inspiration for people to understand the ballot. So that's another step that we have to be a little bit more proactive in, and that is introducing people to this ballot so they can understand how complex it is, but how simple it is to make a decision and to vote. So the COVID-19 has pulled us, I think, into see what family is all about. And family is like, we can influence, if just those people that are within our family circles to get out and make sure they vote, then we've accomplished more than we have in all the years, even with the laws in our favor. But we have to go out and exercise the right that we have given to us. So that's my take on how COVID has pulled us together, yet it's destroyed so many of our people.
Right. Well, thank you, Ms. Palmer. Now, Tiffany, you have mobilized, your particular demographic has mobilized probably more than any other time because you have so much access to information via internet, of course, social media, and you all are really good at it. At the same time, I want to ask you that question that Ms. Palmer just alluded to, that Black women should be more involved in terms of helping lawmakers make policy, give them ideas. Can you talk to us about how you are involved in that, or if you know of young people who are, because I hear many people, I don't want to use the word complain, but a lot do, that I'm not a part of the system. Why should I go out and vote? And my vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter. My voice doesn't matter. And I ask, well, have you contacted your legislature? It doesn't matter. They don't seem to listen. I think we may be able to give some kind of, direction here about what people really can do and how they can really make a difference. So Tiffany, I want to hear from you. How are you going about, and you can talk specifically to COVID-19 as well.
Yeah, so most definitely, I think that trying to vote is a big thing, and recognizing that importance and power of it, especially as a Black woman, being that this is not something we always had. And actually this 2020 election will be my first time I get to vote for president. So that's exciting in itself. And just recognizing that power that I have is definitely crucial. And COVID-19 ties into this in the way we mobilize as the youth on social media and other methods. Significantly with mail-in ballots, as a college student, I'm able to get the ballot mailed to my university because that's not the city I'm originally from. So that definitely contributes to our being able to participate in that process. And I know that's been an issue lately with USPS and things like that, which is definitely a form of voter suppression, not only for Black women, for Indigenous folks and things like that. And that is definitely something that needs to be touched upon because it's limiting the voices of us, the voices of those who can't necessarily wait in those lines to vote. And with COVID-19 especially, and having Black women at the table constantly pressuring legislators and things like that is definitely something I also want to work on in the future. That's why I have my background in public health, because COVID-19 just adds on to the health inequities that were already present for Black women, where we have pregnancy-related causes of death, where we have other things impacting our health, and now COVID adds on to it. And it's saddening, it's disheartening to see that although we do take up a lot of space in society, we are a very important voting bloc, especially on the Democratic side, that oftentimes what we say or what we want doesn't get heard. So definitely being in those spaces, constantly pressuring from all levels, from youth to seniors, it definitely helps contribute to that movement and just emphasize the power that we have, the way we can shift momentum and things like that.
Well, you give me hope listening to you about the future of this country, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's marvelous. Well, Patrice, Let's go to our next question. What issues are most important in 2020, in the 2020 election to Black women?
I think the issues that are important to Black women are the issues that are important to many, many people. I mean, I think that health, education, economic opportunity, economic mobility, access to quality and affordable housing, being able to preserve public education, student debt. I think Black women are probably the most overeducated group of people, but are literally like suffering in a disproportionate way from the volume and the level of student debt that we have incurred in order to be able to attain that educational achievement. So certainly looking at those opportunities, because that has an ability to inhibit your economic mobility locally in terms of how much disposable income you have for housing, for being able to provide healthy foods, et cetera, and being able to pay for things like childcare, which is another huge thing that I think many people are also concerned about.
Those are very, very important issues. And that this also plays with this COVID-19. We've had to pivot and make so many adjustments. And for all of our women that are listening in the audience, I just really, I'd like to salute them just in terms of, you talked about education. You've got women that are raising families, they're tutoring their children, helping them with distance learning, and some of them are teaching at the same time. That's an incredible amount to juggle at one time, if you ask me. So I just wanted to make that point there, but I do want to, I want to hear, again, let's go with Ms. Harris. What issues do you think are most important in 2020 for Black women?
Well, I agree with what's been said because, you know, having being discriminated on a job, that's crucial, and the health issues and so forth. But I think that we should remove all the racial disparities, especially in the South and other parts of the world that don't have policies in place. And we know that there's quite a bit of discrimination against certain areas. So I think that we should have a seat at the table and have people go into those communities and visit to see what's needed. Because right now we don't know, we have a good idea that there's a lack of education in the school system. I mean, even though now quite a few states don't have computers, the kids cannot access a laptop to go on and do their homework. And with the parents working, there's no one there to help educate these kids. So it's going to be very important that we have new strategies for the new, after the election, is to make sure that everyone get a fair share of what the resources are in the community. The policies must be changed because we're tired of being underprivileged and not being able to have good health care or even employment. So it's going to be very important that everyone get in there and make sure that these changes are made for the betterment of the country.
Oh, thank you so much. Ms. Palmer, you care to answer the issues that you feel are most important in 2020?
Well, thank you. I believe that the most important, number one, is to do something about the health disparities that we have. That's number one in terms of probably many of the families that we now see suffering with COVID is because of health disparities in the system. And these health disparities in the system stem from the pay equity. We're working for the same jobs, and yet some of us are not getting paid the same as some of our counterparts. So we have to look at pay equity as well as the job opportunities. So when they all go together to me, for me, in my thinking, and that is the higher the pay, the higher the medical that comes with the package, usually. So that's another area where if you look at pay equity and the type of tax we receive, then we'll have a higher level of health care as well in those packages. Some of those things are things that we just have to insist on. And when you're getting your new job, ask them about, well, what will be my health packet that goes along with it? And this is for the young people who are coming into to getting these new jobs. Try to get the entire treatment, not just the salary, but all that goes with it. The other thing that I feel, and we've all felt it so, is the police reform. And I know so many cities are talking about it. So I think go back to when we tried to get a uniform type of policing, because you can be in LA and cross the lines into Santa Monica and you have a whole new set of rules that apply to you as a citizen. So that whole uniformity in policing, uniformity and throughout the city and throughout the nation, I think are some of the key things that I would like to see us focus on. I know the justice system is one that is difficult to crack, but we have to put it high on our priority. And those are the legal people that are that we have at our fingertips, that hear what we're talking about. We have to encourage them to and make sure that they're working on this total legal justice system. And that's not just because, say, California's doing one thing, Missouri's doing a different thing. Everywhere across the country, they have different types of justice systems. And I think that we should begin to look at a justice system that applies for the United States as much as possible, some of the more critical ones. So those are the things that I feel we really should be focused on. They're just four different things, but they're so important in the life of the next generation and in the life of the older people. And as you can tell, because of COVID, it pointed out, it was all about the people who had the best health system, the best health care, survived COVID. Those did not. Sometimes they were the ones that we see of the statistics of those who passed away. So our health system is part of the justice system. It's unequal.
Very, very important. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, Ms. Palmer. I was thinking about Congresswoman Bass. In fact, I think she tried to champion, or probably still is, a national policy in terms of law enforcement that would be adopted throughout the country. At this time, let's take a quick moment for remarks from a few of our community civic leaders.
Hello, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Karen Bass, and I just want to congratulate the BBA for what your work has been over the last 5 decades, and especially its leader, Skip Cooper. What a day it is. I want to congratulate all of the women honorees as well, and most notably, our own Senator, soon to be Vice President Kamala Harris, along with all of the other women leaders who are being honored today. I do have to say that as I am excited about your event, I do have to say that I have a heavy heart for your board chair, for my dear friend, for my mentor, for someone who I worked for, served as Gwen Moore's secretary when she was at the Greater Los Angeles Community Action Agency and was the personnel director. The theme of today, Women Equality Day, and the significance of the African American vote, especially the women's vote, Gwen Moore embodied that. Everything about Gwen was about making sure that we turn out to vote, making sure that we step up and stand up and lead. She encouraged me for decades and encouraged me to take her seat in the state assembly. Assembly District 47, when I was elected in 2004, she was very much a part of my campaign. So I will just say, in terms of the women's vote and the significance of the women's vote, one of the things that we have to do in our community is nurture the next generation of leaders, because community leaders and mentors, people who were exactly like Gwen Moore, they are the ones that help ensure that our community is represented, that our community turns out and vote. So one of the most important contributions we can make, and we should make it today, especially in her honor and in her memory, is to make sure that we continue to lead and that we look back and nurture the next generation of leaders so that our community always participates at its fullest. Thank you very much. And congratulations, BBA.
Hi, I'm State Senator Holly Mitchell. And in this year, 2020, the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment and the 55th anniversary of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, Black women are emerging as an electoral powerhouse, and we fully deserve the attention and respect of elected officials and candidates as we're all facing one of the most pivotal elections in our country's history. Our participation in local, state, and national races as candidates, as activists, as voters is paramount in the potential to steer our country towards a more just, equitable, and inclusive future. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to cast my vote for a Black woman to serve in the highest office of the land. I hope you will get out and vote November 3rd as if our lives depend on it, because in fact, they do.
Yvonne Burke, the Honorable Yvonne Burke, you are able to join us now. We're so glad that you're here. We were just talking about the issues that are most important in the 2020 election for Black women.
First of all, the most important thing is for us to vote and to get out to vote to make sure that we're heard, because this is something that is so historic, and it's an opportunity for us, and we have to make sure that we get everyone understanding that we have to participate. Because from government, and I've been involved in government at various levels, many of the very benefits you've been talking about are being cut back in governmental entities because the cost of insurance has been such that state, local, and even federal are cutting back on insurance that is available in terms of the broad coverage that we always expected. So that's one of the things that I believe has had an effect in terms of COVID. I think that people did not have the kind of coverage that they have traditionally had, and essential workers particularly, people who are involved in terms of our health system. But I tell you one thing, watching this on television, I've been impressed with how many Black women we have at high levels in terms of a health system and the kind of contributions they're making. Scientists, doctors, we are really the backbone of this health system. And we're the ones who are dying because unfortunately we're on the front line. And I really am very impressed by the fact that if there's going to be a vaccine, there's going to be a lot of input from African-American women in the development of that vaccine.
Well, that's the first take that I've heard on that. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, have you been watching who's on television in terms of these doctors and nurses? And also the woman who is at one of the forefront of one of the developments of the vaccine here in the United States. So, not only are we government workers, we are also in business. But, business has been very difficult. And what we're seeing happen is that there is an effect from this whole COVID-19 in terms of the business community, and particularly the small business community that is the backbone of African American business. So we need to be ready to get those businesses back up. And I think we have to take advantage of some of the discussions that are going on in terms of Black Lives Matter. Well, Black Lives Matter, but also economy for Blacks matters, in order to give an opportunity to many of these businesses that they aren't the ones that go under, but that they get the benefits, not just the big corporations getting billions and millions and millions, but make sure that some of these small businesses are allowed to survive.
You know, we need our economy to survive. So Tiffany, when she graduates, she will have that opportunity. And I think, Tiffany, you said that you were interested, you're involved in health. Is that correct? In terms of your studies at Berkeley?
Yes. So my minor was in global public health. And later on, after I graduate from UC Berkeley, I want to pursue a law degree and also a master's in public health so I can continue to pursue health policy.
That's terrific. Well, what issues are important to you in 2020?
Not to, I guess, repeat everyone, because many things were listed, from racial inequality, police brutality, voter suppression, healthcare, education, wealth inequality. I definitely think it boils down to systemic racism, institutional racism, the way that in the educational system, Black girls tend to be the higher percentage of girls that are suspended or that are expelled, when the action is not necessarily something you can really discipline the same for, or the reason that when people like me do get into the workforce, I have to put in so many hours, work harder and longer to try to even make the equivalent of a white man who maybe when they're age 40. And definitely just the other factors in terms of criminal justice reform, and essentially like defunding the police and moving some of that money to systems that need it. So the educational system, the fact that with COVID-19 rampant, a lot of these underfunded schools don't have the resources to even attend the classes to receive that education. And that's why, especially at Berkeley, in my position on the Black Recruitment Retention Center, K-12 recruitment, we've been trying to find ways to help those students out, whether it's providing tutoring or trying to find ways to use money to like give them resources and technology, because it just continues to further the gaps that already exist, whether it's in wealth, whether it's in opportunity. And overall, I think those are issues that we need to tackle on top of what everyone else said, but definitely starting at the systemic level and breaking down those walls that were in place against us.
All right, thank you.
I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about this case that came down with the Supreme Court this week, Harvard, and whether or not it's going to have an impact with us here in California. Affirmative action is absolutely necessary. And even though what we're talking about is affirmative action among people who have the same grade points, there seems to be a question in terms of whether or not you can even have the kind of consideration of race as a factor. So this Supreme Court case will have an impact on, in California, of course, the UC system is lower now than it was 20 years ago in terms of the percentage of minorities that are attending our UC system. And I'm really concerned about how we're going to maintain the percentages that we have and increase them. Because if it's true that we're going through the cases, and if the Supreme Court is going to continue in the vein that it has in the last 2 weeks, we've got trouble.
That's a very important point. On top
And to Ms. Burke's point about that, I was a student at UC Berkeley in 1996 when Proposition 209 passed. So from my junior year to the start of my senior year, I was able to see in real time the precipitous drop in Black student enrollment on campus and have watched it continue to decline. I have been very active and very involved and very vocal in doing Black student recruitment through the Alumni Association and wanting to make sure that Black students who are on campus know that they belong, that their place is valid, they have earned it, and that they have any right to be there as any other student who has been admitted, and that they will be able to be supported and they will be able to thrive.
And that's what I don't know. A lot of those, it will take a lot of groups that reach out to our Black students on these different campuses. And Patrice, I hear those stories all the time, not being able to even make your voice heard. And even when you do, to really be ostracized for even speaking up, or you are considered what? You're a little too sensitive because it wasn't meant the way that you took it. Yvonne, you wanted to say something again.
I think that we all are going to have to say, we're going to help these students. We're going to help them financially. We're going to make every effort to try to get more young people into the UC system because we pay our taxes and they're entitled to these positions. And I don't take anything away from our state colleges, but they'll be next. The next thing we'll be saying in terms of the state colleges, whether or not, or our state universities, whether or not we will have access to higher education. Now, it's wonderful that many young people have decided to go to the East and to the traditionally African-American schools, but we are entitled to have representation according to our population and more in terms of our UC system. So I think we're going to have to be prepared in the next 6 months to fight this and to hold people and hold the university and the state colleges to the fact that we have to have representation.
And that speaks to another economic issue, considering, look at the schools today. So many of the universities, because of the COVID-19, they're having problems. And who's the first, who's the top tier, generally when there's a financial issue, it's students of color.
Right. And we have to stand behind them. I think we have to make sure they get the internships and they get the opportunities. And in terms of business, bring some of them in to learn the business and we call internship, we all have them in government, but also we have to make sure that they get the internships throughout big business as well as smaller community businesses. And I think we have to take advantage of what's happening right now. There is a real concern. Every place you see on television, everybody's talking about, yes, we want to make sure that there is adequate opportunities for people of every color and particularly of African Americans. We're going to have to make sure we take advantage of the headlines and say, okay, get some of these young people in positions so that they can move up the ladder in terms of the business ladder to get into top positions in terms of executive positions. So I think we should take advantage of what the newspapers are saying, of all the guilt everyone is expressing for John Floyd, and translate that into opportunity. As far as I'm concerned, the business community needs to step up, not just the athletes, of course, because the athletes also, but if those athletes express the fact that their sponsors should have in their company top level executives of every ethnicity and particularly African Americans.
On the boards.
Can we just check in with Tiffany for a moment as a rising senior? What is your experience like? You're doing remote learning for this next school year or semester for sure, right?
Yes.
How are you coping and how are you managing? Okay.
I'm managing well because it's my senior year and I have the privilege of living in an area where I can go to high school and take AP credits and different things like that, because I also took classes at my community college. So this semester for fall, because even though it's remote, I don't have many classes because I'm ahead of my units. Nonetheless, it's very hard to be focused with everything going on to really commit fully to the classrooms, because normally I would enjoy going to the classroom, having that interactive element. And even though I didn't necessarily see a lot of people who liked me in my classes, I think just being in that setting felt different. Like being on campus was like, okay, like this is my space to claim. Whereas being online, I feel a little disconnected, and maybe also because through Zoom and things like that, it's harder for people to recognize you're even there. So it can also create a sense of invisibility in a way, unless you're always like speaking up and things like that. So definitely, yeah. Just definitely some of the things that have been impacting me, especially just moving forward and planning out my future, and whether there's job security, different things like that. So yeah, those are the things that have been impacting my experience so far.
Well, we're hoping.
So I want to challenge all of the adults on this call to make sure that we hold you up, and we make sure that we hold up people like Tiffany. So for all of us that have resources, all of us that have connections, all of us that have opportunities to help create space and open doors for you and your peers, I challenge us to do that.
Absolutely. Zoom call. If we have to do Zoom, that's what we have to do. I'm hoping that we will open up a little more in the very, very near future, just in terms of there's nothing like that face-to-face experience.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing like that. So hopefully we can do that. But in the meantime, when we're not taping, Tiffany, I'm going to give you my email address so you can reach out to me anytime.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Patrice. Well, let me ask this question, because this is on the forum. What actions must Black women take to ensure that their issues and priorities are addressed? Tiffany, you want to start us off with this one?
Yes, I can most definitely do that. In terms of the actions Black women need to take, personally for me, I know the labor has always fallen on us, and I feel like sometimes it shouldn't ultimately fall on us. We should definitely be supported and uplifted in all that we do and uplifted by others. Nonetheless, I still believe that we need to take up more space in elected positions and fill in the cracks that society intentionally lets us fall through. We need to rise as a collective, recognize our power and our lived experiences, because oftentimes people think maybe if you don't have that education, if you don't have that background in something, you don't know what you're talking about. But it's like, no, I lived it, I've seen it, I've been a part of it. And, you need to listen. And the way we make people listen is by voting. The way we make people listen is by holding people accountable, legislators, community leaders, to our own needs, and acknowledge that because we are such an important voting bloc, because we are such an important force when we mobilize, that we are not going to be taken for granted. Like, our support is not just going to be something that oh, okay, we have it, but we're not going to listen to you. And I definitely think that as of lately, Black women have been more daring to run, to win, to demand that leaders fix the system that maintain disparities that we all face in various aspects of our life. So definitely, as other people have mentioned prior, Black women oftentimes, we don't do things only for ourselves. I would think that we're very selfless people. We often do things for our communities, our families. We do things with people in mind, and essentially we want the betterment of society in general. So I think that just the main actions we need to take, like I said, is taking up more space, especially seeing a Black woman on the VP ticket today. It just shows how it's very inspirational seeing someone fight that fight on the national stage, because I'm like, okay, I can fight the fight on a personal level at my institutions, in different spaces that I occupy. And just recognizing that we are in an important history right now, a moment of history right now, and how we can't let that momentum die out or let up, because ultimately I have people after me depending on me, people before me depending on me, people depending on us to not be silenced, to continue to let our voices be heard, to continue to put out action and commit to ultimately bettering society and ourselves.
Well, I feel better about the future already listening to Tiffany, and to Yvonne's point about striking while the iron is hot. If we're in a position right now for people to listen to the priorities or things that we want to bring to the table, we have to do it and continue, because too many times and too often we tend to focus on an issue, that we feel is important, and it gets a little bit of noise, and then we go to the next, or it fades away. So that's the other question. What actions should we be taking to ensure that issues are prioritized and being heard? Yvonne?
Speak up. That's what, we're saying. You speak up wherever you are. We all belong to boards. We're in organizations. We're in businesses. Take advantage of it.
That's it.
Okay. Can we speak to women who may not have the positions that we have, who are still taking care of families, who are still voters? I talk to people sometimes in the field, and their question is, well, how do I get my voice heard? Or what else do women need to do to be heard?
I'd like to chime in on that. I would like to say that, can you hear me?
I can. Can everybody else
hear you? We can hear you.
All right. I just wanted to point out how important it is to belong to part of your community. Many of your home owners association, they're attended by 10 or 12 people, and they have 200 or 300 people in the community. So I think the Zooming and has really brought us together to see the power of community, just in your community, that what you can do. And I think it's important that we belong to our local community agency so we can make an impact right where we are. And it's amazing how it goes out and it helps so many people across the nation. That's one thing. And just recently, this past week, just for an example, there's a legislative law that was about to be passed through the legislature, but with the homeowners throughout Southern California and Northern California came together and agreed to oppose it because it was not in the best interest of any community. So those are the kind of things I think we need to do. Become a part of even a local club. And if you know friends who are not a part, just keep them email and text so that they're up on what's going on. That helps a lot. And as I stated earlier, when you help a legislator make a law, you don't just give them the idea and then you run away, but you have to keep coming back and keep helping them tweak it and get it until it's right and then get it passed. So those are some of the steps I feel that we need to be more engaged in, and that is working with these elected officials so that we can truly see laws through, and they can be proud of what they're saying and doing because they know they have the community behind them. So I strongly suggest that. And visit your local officials.
Right.
I know this past week we lost a good friend of ours, Gwen Moore. But when I was trying to do little things, I thought they were little, I would go to Gwen's office and I'd just show up and ask her questions and talk to her when she was there. When she wasn't there, I'd talk to her staff.
Right.
And those are the things that I feel that we elect people and then we just forget about them. But they are there. They really want to do what the community wants done. So stay connected. Those are things I think we can do. And they're easy, even under this restriction. I've found how much work I get done, even because I'm not running all over town, because I'm stationed and I can deal with something very important right from home, but I speak up. Right now, we have a couple of our dear legislators who are working on bills that are going to help with the police issue. They're in Sacramento working on some bills, and we just keep talking with them and tweaking it so that they can get them passed. So that's my recommendation.
Everybody can be
local clubs, local organizations, and stay in touch with your leadership.
I have to add this. You know, we need to also make sure we can maintain our representation at every level in terms of African Americans, because we are in trouble.
We're in trouble.
We are in trouble.
Yes.
We're in trouble because the numbers in most of our districts are not what we think they are.
Mm.
We are a very small part of the population in California and in Los Angeles County. So we have to really do twice as much work now. And as we go into reapportionment, if we want to maintain any representation, we're going to have to be on top of those committees to make sure that we maintain a representation, city, county, federal, state. We are really at a crisis. And I can't say it enough. We have to maintain voices.
Absolutely.
At every level of government. Let's not think because we see them on TV, they're there to stay. They're not there to stay. They're there only as long as we maintain them there and that we vote and make sure that we're also fighting the fight to say, you know what, we may be visible as African Americans, but we're a very small part of the population, and we're a population that must be considered today, not from what was in the past, today and in the future.
Right.
And because we've seen the numbers dwindle from time after time.
To speak to what Ms. Burke was just saying is that one of the things that we can do is make sure we fill out those census papers before September the 30th. You were saying that people that are at home and they're not doing anything, they can get on the phone, make sure that their family and friends have sent out those papers for the census. You can go online or you can mail them in, but that's going to be very, very important because that will determine how much money will be displaced to our community. So that will be something that we can do. And then the other is that when we vote for a candidate, we have to make sure we know what that candidate is all about. Because a lot of times when we fill out our voting form, people just, oh, I think I like that judge name or whatever. You don't really get into what they're all about. So that's going to be major. Make sure you know that person, and when they're running and asking for your support, say, okay, what are you going to do for the Black community? What are you going to do for us? And all of those things need to be asked before you throw your support behind that candidate. But like you said, getting out and voting, getting those papers in to the censors is going to be very, very important as to how much money we will get. Because I understand that they have about $675 billion. And if the papers are not filled out, they don't have a good count, then your community will not get their share of the money.
That's right. That's something all of us can do. Like you say, email it or just walk it down to the post office. Drop it in the mailbox.
Right.
Well, ladies, this has been so empowering, but that is our time. So I want to thank you for all of your input and for all of your wonderful advice. It's been so inspirational. It's been inspirational to me, so I'm sure it has been to our listeners, our virtual participants. Once again, I want to thank the Honorable Celestine Palmer, founder of the Los Angeles African American Women Political Action Committee and Los Angeles African American Women's Public Policy Institute, Patrice Marshall McKenzie, board president of the LA African American Women's Public Policy Institute, our youngest participant, Tiffany Okiani, a senior at the University of California, Berkeley and Cal Berkeley's Black Recruitment and Retention Center, Ms. Aline Brown Harris, chair of National Congress of Black Women Los Angeles chapter, and the Honorable Yvonne Burke, former Los Angeles County Supervisor and the first African American woman to represent the West Coast in Congress. But the conversation doesn't have to end here. You can continue the discussion on the Black Business Association's Facebook page. I'm going to give you that information, so get a pencil, get a pen, Right. Or you see how old I sound. Get your phones, whatever else you're going to use. Get your keyboard. Facebook.com/Black Business Association and use the hashtag BBA Salute to Black Women. That's all in one sentence. Once again, I'm Pat Harvey, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. And I look forward to next year when we can all break some bread and hug each other, see each other face to face. In the meantime, we're going to continue to fight the good fight. Thank you.
I want to thank our moderator, Pat Harvey, and all of our incredible panelists. And remember, you can continue the conversation online at the BBA's Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Black Business Association. And I can't say it enough that your support of the BBA in these critical times are more important than ever before. Please donate using the information at the bottom of your screen, or go to bbala.org and join, renew, or contribute what you can. I'm Kim Anthony Morrow, and on behalf of the Black Business Association, thank you for watching. Take good care.